When you're looking for a piece of equipment that's supposed to sit in the back of a kitchen or a bar and just keep churning out ice without you having to think about it, the biggest fear is that you'll end up with a fancy-looking machine that spends more time on maintenance than on actually making ice. You want something that blends into the workflow, that won't surprise you with a sudden need for a new drain line or a weird humming noise at 2 a.m., and you want to feel confident that every dollar you spend actually translates into usable ice, not just a higher spec sheet. That's the dilemma most of us face when we start scrolling through the endless list of commercial ice makers, especially when the headline says 412 pounds of ice per day and you start wondering whether you'll ever need that much, or if you'll be stuck with a massive unit that takes up more floor space than you have. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's talk about the Hoshizaki F450 MAJC, a 22-inch air-cooled Cubelet ice machine that promises exactly those numbers. I dug through professional forums, talked to a few small to mid-size bar owners, and skimmed the handful of Amazon reviews that actually mention day-to-day use. The consensus is that this machine sits in a sweet spot for anyone who needs a steady supply of mini Cubelet nugget ice. Think cocktail bars, family-style diners, or even a busy catering operation that serves frozen drinks at outdoor events. But it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and there are a couple of practical trade-offs that you'll want to weigh before you click Add to Cart. First, let's picture the real-world setup. The F450 MAJC measures just over 2 feet wide, which means it will sit comfortably along a standard commercial prep line or in a walk-in cooler without demanding an entire wall. Its stainless steel exterior is easy to wipe down, and because it's air-cooled rather than water-cooled, you won't have to plumb a separate chiller circuit. That's a major win for places where a dedicated cooling loop would be a nightmare to install or where water pressure is inconsistent. The catch? Air-cooled units tend to run hotter in a cramped kitchen, so you'll want at least a foot of clearance behind the machine for airflow. In a small CAF with a tight hallway, that extra space can feel like a design compromise, but most commercial spaces have the room to accommodate it. Now, what does 412 pounds of ice per day actually mean for you? If you break it down, that's roughly 18 pounds per hour if you run the machine continuously. For a bar that serves an average of 30 to 40 drinks per hour, each requiring a handful of nugget ice, the unit can easily keep up without dipping into a backup bin. The nugget-style ice is the kind you find in Japanese soda fountains, soft, chewable, and great for diluting drinks without watering them down too quickly. That texture does more than just taste better, it also reduces the amount of ice you have to scoop to achieve the same cooling effect, which can speed up service during rush hour. One of the practical strengths that shows up in real-world chatter is the reliability of Hoshizaki's internal pump system. Users report that the water intake valve doesn't clog as often as some competing brands, which translates to less downtime for cleaning. The machine runs a self-clean cycle every 48 hours, and you can trigger an extra cycle with a single button press if you notice a dip in output. Because the ice is produced in a Cubelet format, the storage bin can hold a decent amount before you have to empty it, usually around 50 pounds. That means you can walk away for a short break, come back, and still have enough ice for another round of service without a refill. On the flip side, there are some hidden trade-offs that aren't obvious until you've lived with the machine for a week or two. The first is noise. Air-cooled compressors can be louder than their water-cooled counterparts, and the F450 MAJC sits in the 60 to 70 dB range, which many bar owners describe as a constant hum that blends into the background but becomes noticeable during quiet shifts. If you run a fine dining establishment that relies on a serene ambience, you might need to place the unit behind a solid partition or invest in a sound-dampening enclosure, which adds to the overall cost. Another practical weakness is the water consumption. While the machine is air-cooled in the sense that it doesn't need a separate chiller, it still draws a steady stream of water for the ice-making process. In locations where water pricing is high or where you have a closed-loop filtration system, the monthly water bill can creep up, especially if you're pushing the machine to its maximum output. Some users have mitigated this by running the unit at a lower capacity during off-peak hours, which conserves water but also reduces ice output. It's a balancing act you'll need to consider based on your local utility rates. Who should buy this machine? If you run a bar, brewpub, or a